The room looked harmless at first. Bright lights, easy applause, a polished television set built for laughter, not collapse. Everything about it suggested routine entertainment, the kind of environment carefully engineered to keep things smooth, controlled, and predictable. The audience sat comfortably inside that expectation, ready for jokes that would land clean and fade just as quickly. It felt safe, managed, like nothing real could break through the surface. Then Jim Carrey opened his mouth and the whole atmosphere changed. Not gradually, not politely, but all at once. Because when Jim Carrey talks about Donald Trump, he does not talk like a politician, and he does not talk like a cautious celebrity trying not to offend anybody. He talks like a man staring directly at the absurdity of the moment and refusing to pretend it is normal. And that refusal alone was enough to crack the illusion the room was built on. And that is exactly why Trump could not handle what came next. The studio looked like every other late-night television set in the country. Bright overhead lights washed down in wide sheets across the stage, turning everything smooth and shadowless. The chairs were angled just right. The desk gleamed. The backdrop had that familiar polished glow designed to make everything feel effortless and controlled. The audience filed in the way audiences always do, settling into their seats with phones silenced and expectations already shaped. They came for entertainment. They came for punchlines that would hit clean, get a laugh, and disappear before anyone had to think too hard. The whole room was engineered for comfort. Every surface, every angle, every cue card propped behind the cameras. All of it pointed toward the same thing. Keep it light, keep it moving, keep it safe. Nobody in that room was prepared for what Jim Carrey was about to do. He walked out the way he always does, tall, loose-limbed, grinning like a man who already knows the funniest thing in the room and hasn't said it yet. His shoes hit the stage floor with that easy, confident stride, shoulders relaxed, arms swinging with that restless energy he carries everywhere, turned all the way up before he even reached the microphone. The crowd erupted before he spoke a single word. That was normal. That was expected. Jim Carrey gets a reaction just by existing in a room. But tonight, something sat differently behind his eyes. There was still the warmth. Still the elastic energy, still the rubber-faced brilliance that made him one of the most famous performers alive. But underneath all of it, there was weight, direction, purpose. He grabbed the microphone, looked out at the audience, and let the applause die on its own. He didn't rush it. He didn't wave it down. He just stood there, letting the silence build until it became something physical, something the room could feel pressing against its walls. Then he started talking, and the whole atmosphere cracked open like glass. "Listen," Carrey said, leaning into the mic with that familiar half grin. "Just because you voted Republican doesn't make you stupid. It doesn't make you different. It doesn't make you worthless. I could break bread with anybody who voted for Trump. We could find common ground. We could love each other like human beings are supposed to. That part is real." He paused. The audience nodded along, comfortable, thinking they knew where this was going. A feel-good moment, a bridge-building moment, the kind of thing that gets clipped and shared with captions about unity. But Carrey wasn't building a bridge. He was laying a trap. "But y'all gotta stop doing stupid stuff." The room cracked. Laughter erupted from every corner, sharp and sudden, the kind that escapes before you can catch it. People clapped. People leaned into each other. Someone in the third row threw their head back so far it looked like the chair might tip. Carrey didn't even flinch. He just stood there, letting it roll through the room like a wave, waiting for the exact moment the energy peaked before pulling it right back. "Trump," Carrey said, his voice dropping just enough to shift the temperature, "is the greatest used car salesman this country has ever produced. I mean that. The man could sell you a car with no engine, no tires, no steering wheel, and somehow make you feel lucky you got the deal." More laughter. But this time it came with something else underneath. A flicker of recognition. A small, uncomfortable truth wrapped inside the comedy. People weren't just laughing at the image. They were seeing it. The shiny paint. The loud promises. The confident handshake that feels firm until you realize the keys don't work. Carrey kept pushing. He didn't slow down, and he didn't soften. He said, "Trump didn't make anything great again. What he did was pop open the hood, roll back the odometer, slam it shut, and say, 'Trust me, baby, she runs like new.'" And half the country drove off the lot without checking. The room broke open wider. The laughter was louder now, sharper, with an edge that cut through the comfortable safety the studio was designed to protect. People in the front row leaned forward. People in the back stopped checking their phones. The energy had shifted from casual to electric, and everyone in the room could feel it. Carrey's eyes swept across the audience slowly, deliberately, like a man measuring the weight of what he was about to say next. "Now look," he said, his voice dropping into that lower register he saves for the moments that matter. "America has dealt with liars before. We have. This country has survived people who stretched the truth, bent the facts, twisted words until they barely meant anything. The system held. It bent, it wobbled, it creaked, but it held. He stopped. Let the silence hang for a full beat. 2 beats. 3. The problem with Trump is not the lying, Carrey said. The problem is the shamelessness. The word landed like a stone dropped into still water. The ripple moved through every row. It's the speed of it, Carrey continued, pacing now, his long legs carrying him across the stage in slow, deliberate strides. The volume, the spectacle. He doesn't even try to make the lies sound believable anymore. He just says them louder, faster, with more confidence. Like if he keeps moving, nobody can catch up long enough to check. Someone in the audience let out a sound that was half laugh, half groan. The noise people make when something hits too close. Carrey pointed toward the sound without looking. You feel it, he said. Everybody feels it. 1 minute you think, okay, this is it. This is the moment it all falls apart. The avalanche is starting. And then he does some slippery little sidestep, some shiny distraction, and suddenly everybody's looking somewhere else. He shook his head slowly, his expression shifting from amusement to something heavier. This administration is a rabid dog, Carrey said, and the room went still. It's flipping everything upside down. And the craziest part? It's as obvious as the nose on your face. Everybody can see it. But seeing it and stopping it are two completely different things. The audience sat in the weight of that for a long moment. No laughter, no clapping, just the hum of the studio lights and the sound of 500 people processing something they already knew but hadn't heard said out loud like that. Then Carrey did what great performers do. He turned the weight into a weapon. Shamelessness, he said, his voice rising again, is not a superpower. I need y'all to hear that. It is not strength. It is not toughness. It is not confidence. Shamelessness is the mark of a villain. The laughter that followed was different. It was tighter, more controlled. The kind of laugh that comes when people realize they are not watching comedy anymore. They are watching something get exposed. And Carrey was the perfect person to do it. Because Jim Carrey understands performance the way a surgeon understands anatomy. He knows how masks work. He knows how exaggeration works. He knows how a persona gets built layer by layer, repetition by repetition, until the character becomes so familiar that people start confusing it with reality. He has spent his entire career studying the architecture of illusion. And standing on that stage, microphone in hand, he turned that knowledge into a scalpel. Trump, Carrey said, is a performance. That's all he is. Every piece of it is constructed. The strongman act, the savior act, the winner act, the truth-teller act. Layer after layer after layer, each one designed to hold up the next one. And from a distance, it looks solid. It looks real. It looks like something you can lean on. He paused. But the second you get close enough to check the foundation, he shook his head. There's nothing there. It's a movie set. Front walls, no rooms. The audience murmured. Someone whistled. A woman near the aisle pressed her hand to her mouth. Then Carrey twisted the blade deeper. Covering for Trump, he said, is like putting makeup on a melanoma. The reaction was instant and violent. Laughter collided with discomfort. Gasps tangled with sharp exhales. A man in the fourth row dropped his jaw so far open, his companion reached over and pushed it shut. Because the line was brutal. It was ugly. It was uncomfortable. But it was precise. Surgically, devastatingly precise. Something serious cannot be treated with surface-level solutions. That was the point. Trump does not fix what's broken. He paints over it. He doesn't repair the damage. He markets around it. He doesn't lead forward. He reframes weakness as strength and confusion, as control, and wreckage as renovation. Carrey wasn't done. He kept the pressure steady, his voice finding that rhythm performers find when every word matters. Everything with Trump is presentation, Carrey said. A showroom version of reality. Bright lights, clean talking points, that big confident delivery where every sentence sounds like a closing argument. But the moment you start opening doors, the moment you start checking behind the walls, nothing lines up. The numbers don't add up. The promises don't hold. The timelines don't make sense. The whole thing depends on you never looking too closely. He let that sit. Then he leaned forward. The illusion needs distance. That's the trick. The closer you get, the faster it falls apart. And somewhere, In this dramatic retelling, Trump was already watching. His people had told him about it. Someone on his staff had pulled it up on a phone, then a tablet, then the big screen in the room where he paced at night when the cable news got under his skin. At first, he did what he always did. The dismissive wave, the muttered insult, the small smirk designed to show everyone watching that he was above it, untouched, unbothered. The performance of not caring, executed with the precision of a man who has practiced it 10,000 times. But Carrey kept going, and the words kept landing. "This is what happens," Carrey said, his voice quieter now, almost sad. "When a country confuses performance for character, when volume replaces substance, when spectacle replaces strength, when confidence replaces credibility." He looked directly into the camera. Trump is not complicated. He is not some mystery wrapped in genius. He is an infomercial that somehow got access to the nuclear codes. The room shook. The laughter rolled through the studio in waves, each one bigger than the last, crashing against the walls and bouncing back. A cameraman behind the left monitor was caught on a wide shot with his shoulders shaking. A stagehand near the curtain leaned against the wall and covered his face with both hands. It wasn't just funny, it was clear, painfully, impossibly, beautifully clear. Then came the line that broke everything. Carrey looked toward the crowd, his face softening into something real, something unguarded, and said, "Trump keeps acting like he's the star of the movie, but he's really just the villain who keeps mistaking the applause machine for love." The silence, after that sentence, lasted exactly 1.5 seconds. And in that silence, the entire room understood what had been said. Not just the words, the meaning, the weight, the truth of a man so desperate for approval that he cannot tell the difference between genuine connection and manufactured response. Then Carrey grinned. That elastic, rubbery, unmistakable grin. And with perfect timing so clean it should be studied in comedy schools, he added, "At this point, even the WIG is trying to escape the role." The studio detonated. It wasn't laughter anymore. It was release. Pure, full-body, uncontrollable release. People doubled over. People grabbed the arms of their chairs. One woman in the second row laughed so hard she started crying, mascara running down both cheeks, while her friend frantically handed her tissues. The sound hit the ceiling and stayed there, vibrating, alive, refusing to settle, because the image was too vivid, too ridiculous, too perfectly aimed. Carrey didn't need to explain it. The audience completed the picture themselves. A public figure so desperately attached to image that even the image itself was trying to get away. And that is why the moment worked, not because of one joke, not because of one punchline, but because of everything it represented. The slipping identity, the weakening illusion, the exact point where fear dissolves into ridicule and power turns into a punchline. Carrey pressed forward. He wasn't letting the room cool down. "Trump talks like he's rebuilding America," Carrey said. "But every time he opens his mouth, it sounds more like demolition with a marketing budget." Someone in the audience shouted, "What job?" Carrey pointed at them without missing a beat. "Demolition man, that's the job. And at this point, there's nothing left to demolish." The audience roared, but now the laughter felt inevitable, automatic. Every new line reinforced the collapse from a different direction. Each angle sharper than the last, each image more vivid, each truth more difficult to look away from. Then Carrey slowed down. The energy in the room shifted. You could feel it. The temperature dropped 2 degrees. The lights seemed to dim even though nobody touched a switch. Carrey's face changed. The grin faded. The elastic energy drained out of his body. He stood still at center stage, microphone held low, eyes moving across the audience, with something that looked less like comedy and more like concern. "The saddest part," Carrey said, his voice barely above a whisper now, "isn't Trump himself." The room went quiet, completely, painfully quiet. "The saddest part is what happens to the people who attach themselves too close to him. When politics becomes identity, when a vote becomes your whole personality, when a leader becomes something personal, something so deep inside you that you can't separate yourself from it anymore." He let the silence do the work. 5 seconds, 10 seconds. The studio felt like a church. "And when that leader starts to crack," Carrey said, "when the paint starts peeling, when the performance starts falling apart, it feels like something inside you is falling apart too. And that right there is the real trap. That is the real damage, because it ties people to something unstable, something that was never built to hold them." His voice came back up, warmer now, steadier. "A candidate is not your identity. A mistake is not your definition. You can step back, you can breathe, you can separate yourself from the show, you can change your mind. He looked into the camera one last time. That's not weakness. That's the strongest thing a person can do. The applause that followed was not the usual television applause. It was not prompted. It was not cued. It rolled up from somewhere deeper, somewhere real, somewhere in the chests of 500 people who had just watched a comedian do something comedians almost never do. Make something big feel small, something powerful feel fragile, something terrifying feel ridiculous. And that is exactly what made Donald Trump lose it. Because Donald Trump can survive insults. He has survived thousands of them. He can survive outrage. He feeds on it. He can survive scandal. He has turned scandal into fuel more times than anyone can count. But he cannot survive clarity. He cannot survive when the illusion is explained so carefully, so simply, so completely that even the people who believed in it start to see the cracks. Jim Carrey did that. Standing tall on a stage built for entertainment, he made the most powerful, constructed image in modern politics wobble on its foundation. And then came the meltdown, the pacing, the shouting. The phone slammed against a desk so hard the screen fractured into a web of cracks. The demands to know why these people still get airtime. The furious half-sentences that started loud and ended nowhere. The attacks, predictable, rehearsed, desperate. Ratings, irrelevance, bitterness, jealousy. Each accusation louder than the last, each one thinner, weaker, more transparent. The louder it got, the clearer the truth became. Because if the joke meant nothing, there would be no reaction. If the words had no impact, there would be silence. But there was no silence. There was noise. There was fury. There was visible, undeniable strain. The response did not weaken the moment. It confirmed it. Every shouted word, every slammed door, every angry midnight post, all of it proved exactly what Carrey had said on that stage. By the end of the night, the studio no longer felt like a television set. It felt like a mirror. And in that mirror stood a man built entirely on image. Image after image after image. Staring at the one thing he could never prepare for, an audience that had finally started laughing at the construction itself. Not slowly, not quietly, and definitely not with the wig intact. If that moment hit you somewhere real, subscribe now. These stories are not just entertainment. They reveal how power actually works, how illusions get built, and what happens when one voice in one room decides to tell the truth loud enough for everyone to hear. Hit the bell. Drop a comment, and whatever you do, do not miss what comes next.